This webinar is, as you know, it's engagement strategies for diverse communities. And what we really mean by that is there are some communities that people don't typically talk to, or they may be seen as hard to reach. And when we were talking about a series of webinars for libraries this year, one of the things we landed on was it would be good to bring some examples forward of some librarians that really did an exemplary job of going beyond where libraries usually go and engaging some communities that are particularly challenging or hard, and then having them talk about the experience that they had doing that, you know, what it required of them, what they learned from it, how it influenced the library's efforts. And as we were thinking about that, the two people that came to mind to me right away were the two that you have joining us today. And I think you'll find both of the stories they have to share really exciting. For those that have just come in, we're up to about 95 now. If you have a question as either one of them are presenting, go ahead and type it in the chat box. I'm going to be monitoring the chat and try to bring forward to them topics for them to discuss that I see themes from the comments that you're making. So if you have a question or comment, observation, go ahead and type it in the chat box, and that would be good. So in today's webinar, this is what we're going to be covering. I'm just going to do a very brief little introduction about the Harwood Institute. Then we're going to move right into the experiences that these two librarians have had engaging often overlooked diverse communities. And then following that, we're going to have a time for your observations, questions, and some discussion. And I have a couple questions teed up for our two presenters to discuss today as well. So that's what we're going to cover. A little bit about the Harwood Institute. I think as many of you know, because we've been around the library field for quite a while now, the Harwood Institute is a nonprofit that really, what it's about is trying to make community a common enterprise again. And to do that, we're trying to create pathways for people to come together and make different choices. So there's greater relevance and impact on the communities that we're trying to impact. And one of the things that we've discovered is that real lasting change only occurs when people in the community are part of the solution. So it's how do you go about engaging people so they have a sense of belief that new pathways can be created that are going to make things more relevant and impactful for their lives. We've had, Institutes is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. We've had a lot of experience working with libraries around the country. California, as I said, we've got two people from there today. Also Michigan, Pennsylvania. We've done a lot of work in Florida, just different states. Indiana, starting a cohort right now. A lot of work in Texas, and the work is just spreading in the library field. We've trained over 4,000 librarians at this point in turning outward practices. And really the core element of turning outward is that, as you see it on the screen here, if you turn outward and make more intentional judgments and choices in creating change, you'll produce greater impact and relevance in your community. So with that, I'm going to move right on to what we're going to address. So before today's webinar, I was in touch with both of these ladies, as you might expect, going over sort of some topics that we wanted to cover. The list of topics that they have is a little bit more detailed than this, but generally speaking, what they're going to address is what is the community that they decided to engage that you know, is a little unusual, hard to reach, or the ones that are often missed, and why did they focus on that community? How did they engage that community before they became more turned outward? What Harwood Institute tool did they use? The Institute has a variety of engagement tools. We'll talk a little bit about what tools they used. What did they learn from using those tools? And what did that learning cause them to do? What was the impact from that new knowledge, that learning that they had? What impact did it have? And then now, given where they are now, since they've done that engagement, since they've had that learning, since they've had that application of what they've learned, where are they now with turning outward? What's next for them? So generally that is the topics we're going to have each of them address to sort of tell their story. So the first person that's going to be presenting for us today is Kathy Middleton, and she's the Deputy Director of the Sacramento Public Library, California. Kathy and the Sacramento Library are just, I say this about every library I work with, but they're one of my favorite libraries, and it's really true. All these places are. They started out, they're a pretty big system. They've got 28 libraries. They serve 1.5 million people. And it's urban, suburban, and rural areas. And you see a little description of the library on the screen there. And with that, I'm not going to explain any more about Sacramento. I'll just move on and I'll let Kathy do that.
Oh, hi everyone. I'm actually in Ohio today. So yes, traditionally from California. But Carlton, are you going to ask me questions or you want me to just start?
Just go ahead and start.
Okay. So like Carlton said, we have a large library system. In the past, we had traditionally done story times for kids with autism, and we kind of reached out to the disability community, but nothing like we have done now with Harwood. So what we focused on was engaging the disability community. We have 2 staff people that have family members with children with disabilities. So we kind of started with sensory story time and family-friendly movies and different things that we kind of guessed that community might want, the disability community might want. We have a couple of staff who are really experts in this field, but we never really talked directly to the entire community about what their needs would be. So I guess what the difference is between Harwood conversations and strategic planning or just focus groups was that we met with members of the disability community. We met with families with children with autism, and we met with adults with disabilities and asked them what were they looking for, not in conjunction with the library, but basically what were their aspirations, what were their concerns in the community. And we really came up with 3 things that the community wanted, and through holding the conversations, we learned that this community wanted to have a central hub of information, somewhere where they could find information about their children's needs. For example, their physical needs, their legal needs, their emotional needs, their educational needs. There's nothing where the parents can find all the information. So that was one area. They also wanted free and accessible programs for the children that were geographically close, that they were relevant to their lives, and free or low cost, that they were lacking in that. And the third thing was a very simple thing. They wanted to be welcome into the library. They wanted to be welcome in the community, basically. So there were 3 areas that we focused on. And from there, we expanded on how we could meet the needs at the library. But what we did, and what I really want to emphasize about Harwood that's different from just regular strategic planning or focus groups or focusing on the library, is when we asked the community what they needed, we wrote a community assessment and shared that with other people. And we gained partners all along the way. So it wasn't just the library trying to do something alone. It was us reaching out to community members and them joining us, giving us more names, more resources, more people, more venues to hold conversations, and basically you're gaining partners and you're gaining information, like public knowledge, all along the way. So it's really important, I think, if I wanted to stress something else, to really engage the community in conversations. Do not overplan, don't take forever. That's what we did. We stumbled for about a year. Then we got Carlton as our coach, and he said, you have to put it on the calendar. You have to make it a priority. And it will not be wasting time if you go out, get these conversations, and this is good information. This is information that's going to make your work worthwhile and relevant and important, and something that you can actually say, the public informed us in the direction we're taking. So that makes it all worthwhile. It's not wasted energy on guessing what does the community want. It's actually listening, taking steps, and checking back in with the community as you go. And I also wanted to mention that I can't take credit for all of this. We have a team of Harwood members, Heather Bratt, Janet Weniger, and then Amber Clark, who passed away last December, were all really integral in this whole thing. And it was their footwork that made all this happen. So I was just kind of supporting the team, but I'm here because Amber's not here anymore. And Carlton, did you want to prompt me with a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if you would talk a little bit about the actual conversations themselves. You know, who specifically you talked to? How did you go about doing it? What did that look like?
Okay, how we engaged the community was because Janet has a son, a 25-year-old son with autism, and she's our resident expert. She had a lot of friends and professionals in the field of autism. We invited groups to meet with us, professionals, and also a parent group. She knew of parent groups in Sacramento, and the Children's Museum helped us by offering a venue. So a bunch of families and kids with autism came to the museum and met with us in the side room, and the kids got to play in the museum while we had this 90-minute conversation, which was really great. So we engaged those parents, and we also engaged Teen Advisory Board. We engaged Jazzy Talkers Group, and this is a group of nonverbal adults who speak with communication tablets. And we were able to, because of another staff person who was very observant to this group that visited in the library, just went in and asked them, can we hold a conversation with you? And they said, sure. So we gave them the questions in advance, and on their communication devices, they brought back the questions and their answers, and they replied with their communication apps.
I'm just curious, did you have to modify the conversations? What conversation tools did you use with that group and the others?
We did not modify any of the questions. We used the same questions that are listed in the Harwood training. So we used all of the 10 questions, used all 90 minutes. I think only a couple conversations we didn't get through all the questions. Maybe we got through 8 or so. Mm-hmm. We also talked to people at the the UC Davis Mind Institute, Alta California Regional Center, SASNA, which is an autism group for family support and advocacy. We talked to the executive director there. We talked to the Altadena California Regional Center, and just a bunch of ask questions, which are the one-to-one questions. It's 3 questions. We talked to many individuals one-on-one. And it was an eye-opening experience to hear directly from the community what their needs were, kind of taking the library out of the picture and just listening what their aspirations and needs were. Especially the conversation at the museum there was a lot of people crying. It was like a release for them to be with each other and to share as a group what it's like to struggle with the many things that they were struggling with. And it was just a really
I can tell it affected you.
Yeah, it really did. And every time I talk about it, I get like this. But they're very open and honest. We learned so much from them. And, you know, they continue to be our advocates, and they continue to give us information. And we're really happy that we got to meet them. But these are people who have a hard time leaving home. There's not a lot of resources. They don't get a lot of sleep. They're stressed out. They support each other, and just getting them as a group together and hearing their concerns was really amazing. So there's a lot of fatigue. There's not a lot of outside support. So they talked about their respite services that they have, and just, I had no idea the struggles that they're going through.
So let me ask you, if you come out of this not having any idea what the struggles they're going through, but obviously you came out of it being touched and having a better sense of the reality of the lives they live, how did that change how the library went about its work dealing with them? And, what is it that was different? What did you end up doing with it all?
Right. So we kind of, as a library, we took their suggestion as being a hub of central information. We're not going to be really the central hub for medical or legal or things like that. We can, of course, refer, but what we did is we created 6 hub libraries that are regionally accessible in our library system that offer all of the services and the products that for the accessibility community. For example, we have each of the hub libraries has sensory story times, family-friendly movies. There are class visits without the public there, so the classes come in without the public, if they prefer that. And we have We Speak library communication tablets at the information desks. So if there's nonverbal children or adults, they can use pictograms on the communication app, and that'll verbalize the need. We've done more outreach. We have specialized library tours. We're developing a sensory toy lending library. We are even hiring more people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The staff at the hub libraries are more knowledgeable about resources for the disability community, so they've been trained. And we've also done, the accessibility team that we now have presented a disability awareness training for every single staff person, and that's like, we're almost at 300 staff have been trained in disability awareness. So that's not only for our staff, we're hiring disabilities, but also for the public. So the hub libraries serve as advocates for the disability community, and there's definitely specific training at the hub libraries. So they're able to answer questions, be welcoming, be that source of information, and we hope to expand those after we just launched officially our hub libraries in April this month, and we hope to expand those in the coming year. We have unofficially had hub libraries now for about probably 5 or 6 months, and they seem to be going well. And we have more staff being trained on our communication apps. And
so another question for you is, you just launched your hub libraries officially in April, right?
Right.
And I'm curious, when did you actually go to the first Harwood training and start this engagement process? What's the timeline look at from the original idea to do something more turned outward to an actual result like this that the community can feel?
Right. So we received our Harwood training in May of 2016. So the official, it's almost been 3 years.
Almost 3 years. And you said you thought about, it was if my memory is correct, it was probably, 6 months before the coaching started?
Yes, I have my little timeline here. December 2016 is when our coaching calls began. And then monthly when we met, with Carlton, we were able to talk about our concerns. I remember even asking, hey, can we change the questions? And the answer is no, of course you don't. So don't change the questions. They fit for any subject, and it's true. It doesn't matter what your focus is. The questions apply to everyone. They're tried and true, and they're just amazing questions to get to the heart of the issues.
And you think you lost about, you said a year, but I'm going to say 6 months.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, we had our 18-month arc, and we did follow through with writing our community assessment, following up. We had our storyboard, all the tools that Harwood offers. I think we took advantage of all the tools. And then we're continuing to take advantage of the tools. We plan to expand doing more conversations just with any member of the public, not just disability families. We intend on doing more conversations to inform our strategic plan in the future. And there's one program that came out of this. It's growing, and I'm sure a lot of public libraries have people with adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities that visit your libraries every day. Well, we have a Library Insiders program, and that is a program where adults with developmental disabilities come and visit with community groups. So we have at least a monthly program for adults with disabilities that visit the library every day. And the purpose is to help them feel welcome in the library and to be able to use any public library, no matter where they move, no matter where they visit, which branch. They're all pretty much the same. So we try to make it a very welcome environment for all the people we serve.
So you have a question here. Was this effort part of a larger initiative, or was it specifically targeted as an outreach to this specific group of people with disabilities?
Like, as I said a little earlier, we had provided some services for people with disabilities, but not to this extent. So it wasn't really a special initiative. I think it just grew from the community conversations and expanded as our accessibility team grew, and more people got interested and joined from our library. It's like a large committee now. It's a large team. I think there's about 18 people involved. And from here, it kind of just, I guess, grew on its own. We didn't decide we're going to do this thing.
So another question I have is, if my memory serves me correctly, when your first group from Sacramento came to training, you had maybe 5 people? We had
4.
4, okay.
Wait, let's see. Yeah, Janet, Heather, Amber, and me.
Okay, so you had 4 people. And now you're at a point where you're doing conversations pretty much across all your branches, and you're using it in strategic planning. And
yes,
I was wondering if you would talk just a little bit about sort of the trajectory from going from 4 people using turned outward practices to a whole system using it.
Well, we'd like to send more people to the Harwood Innovators Lab, but for now, what we've done is we've created a training just to hold conversations, and we created a PowerPoint, and it's based on Harwood practices, and it's got a list of the questions, and I've made the resources available on a SharePoint drive, like our team management drive. So each branch supervisor has been trained in how to do a Harwood conversation, and they will hold at least 3 per branch or per smaller region, and we hope to have 80 conversations by December 2019. So that will inform our strategic plan. And we've begun to do our ask questions, which are the one-on-one conversations as 3 questions. So we started doing that at the Central Library.
Very cool. Very neat. Any questions from anybody for Kathy? Let's see here. What steps did you take to get other community partners not already involved in sensory awareness to be involved in helping with community conversations? Or I would say just in help in terms of programming services, working with you on the hub libraries.
Well, I would say just try to contact people and see if you get a response. I would say the cold calls, we didn't get as many responses, but it's really the personal contacts. So our staff contacts with the people they knew, and then the people they knew talked to the people they knew. So it's exponential as far as reaching that one person, that person reaches another person. You really need to let go of control and let the community take care of it. So in other words, it's not the library leading this thing. This thing has a life of its own. The people will support you and join you, and it just grows that way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's provided that the program is relevant and impactful to people's lives.
Right. And when we shared the assessment with everyone that attended, after they attended, we actually gained a couple more people that way. So just the attendees that left us their contact information, we made sure everyone who was part of a conversation received the community assessment, which is basically the 3 things that the community told us they wanted. And we shared that and gained a few more partners that way.
So you have another question here is about, is the process improve the community's understanding and compassion of people with disabilities?
I think it has, because I think our staff, this is 300 staff or 250 in the public area that now have training and understanding and a little more information that they can share with the public. So I believe it has. I think there's still a lot of work to do, but I believe that the customers that come into the library are seeing a difference. I really believe they are.
Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, how do you envision, given the experience that you've had in terms of gaining public knowledge through conversations about people with disabilities, and that informs your hub communities? I'm wondering, how do you see the public knowledge from your conversations in all your branches? How is that going to inform the strategic planning process? What do you think that looks like?
Well, with any conversation, we didn't go in knowing how it was going to end. We had no idea it was going to be something so simple that no matter which community we spoke to, we ended up with 3 themes, the inclusive and the program and the hub information. So I don't know what to expect, because I'm not expecting any particular thing. We're going to go in there and just listen and document what people say and find the themes, and from there the information will emerge. We think it might be about safety, it might be about homelessness, it might be about education. We don't know. I can make a broad guess, but I think what we'll do is just let the community tell us what's on their mind, and then we as a library will try to fill the gap.
And how is that different than you might have done strategic planning before?
We always asked, what do people want from their library? And people generally think more books, more hours. Well, we can do that pretty easily, but it doesn't get to the heart of what do people really want.
What they want in the wholeness of their life.
Yes, for their community. What's going to make them happy and satisfied with their community? Mm-hmm. So we'll engage our governing body, and we'll engage important people in the community that can actually give us a bigger voice. Mm-hmm. Not just the library, but we can gain more partners and more help in trying to move the community forward with a plan. Mm-hmm. That's what we hope.
So you have, I don't know if you can see the questions on the screen. Oh. There's one of them, does your work also include mental health understanding? And as you learn more about what people needed, were you able to bring other community entities on board as partners?
The one executive director of SASNA, which is the autism group, we're in pretty much regular contact with him, and I wish I had my other team members with me, because I know they have other connections with the UC Davis Mind Institute. Yes, the answer is yes, we do have connections with that community. There's more work to do, I'm sure, but as far as informing our accessibility training, we did consult with I'm sorry, I don't have all the information, because the team did most of the work on that. Mm-hmm. And I don't have, but we did consult with experts in the field. I'm sorry, I don't have the names.
So I can add one thing in answer to that, because I'm just recalling that one of the last conversations I had with Amber was when she was getting ready to go out to, is it North Natomas? Is that how you pronounce it?
Natomas,
Natomas, which is a branch she was at, and they were starting a hub library there. I can remember her telling me that there were some community members coming forward that wanted to help, just because of what they heard was happening.
Right.
There. And part of the thing which excites in a Harwood coach is when you begin to see other community members step forward and say, I want to be part of this. So it's not just the library doing it, but it's the community doing it. And if you look back to the original introduction to this webinar, I made a comment about real lasting change occurs only when people and communities are part of the solution. And there was evidence of that taking place there, or at least starting to take place.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate it. And what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to Yesenia and have her talk a little bit about Placentia Library and get her camera back up online, hopefully, and her audio. There you go. And wait, there you are. And you can share with us a little bit about the Placentia Library and what you did, which was particularly interesting and brave.
Yes, so we worked with the low-income Hispanic community. In that area, it has about 5,000 homes, and it's a small area of the community. But it's a very high gang activity community. There are about 3 gangs, particularly in this area, with the core about 75 to 100 members in the gangs. And this is information that our Placentia Police Department provided to us as we, got information about the community. And the reason why we chose this community was because in our Harwood training, one of the things that was recommended is to partner with a community member or an organization that has already some tie-in with the community to help you just really get involved in the community. So there's an organization called Lot 318 that has been working with this particular community area for over 12 years. So what we did is we contacted the director for the organization and told her what we were wanting to do. And she was very excited, and that community really trusts specifically her and the volunteers that work for the organization. So what we did was we set up the conversations in the neighborhood. I mean, I went out to backyards in the apartment complex, outdoors to have 3 of the conversations. They were completely in Spanish. And at first, they were hesitant, but I think just having someone there that they trusted, they slowly started to open up. So that's kind of how we got involved with that specific community and focused on them. We knew that they were underserved community because we would always invite them to our programs and we would let them know, we're having this program, we have these services, and we would want them to attend, but they really didn't always go to our programs or did not go to the library. So we felt like, it's like, we have all these services, come and use them. So we wanted to get them out to the library. But as we continued to work with them and we had these conversations, we definitely found out a lot of information about that specific community that I think was really eye-opening for us. And it really got us to really think like the way we do things with that specific community. And we did our traditional flyers, social media, sending flyers to the schools, some outreach throughout the year. But after putting together the conversations, we found out that these communities have had issues with safety because it's a high gang activity area. They did not feel safe to walk out in the streets at a certain time after a certain time of the day. The parents of the kids would not allow them to go out. And so we pretty much realized that no matter how much we advertise our programs and services, we were not going to get them out to the library. So then what we did in trying to help out this community was we started doing them and bring our services to them. And so what we did was we had our staff help. They have a small library. They have 2 homework club areas, and they have a small library collection. So what we did was clean out their collection, and we added books that we had weeded from our collection to add. We used, in our school district, we used the AR levels. So we were able to go through each book and put the AR level on each book so that they knew what level the book was in. And so then Letty, who had that connection with the parents, asked the parents to find out what AR level all the students that were participating in the homework club were. And so we were able to add books to make sure that they had AR levels in all the areas that they were in or were going towards. So we were able to grow their small little library for their homework club. So we were able to do that with our understanding that no matter how much we promoted our services, we weren't going to get them to the library. So that was definitely something that really came out of that was really helpful for them and for us to understand that part. So the conversations that we had with this group specifically was in Spanish, and it was just outside, like I said, of their neighborhood. It really did it really takes someone that feels comfortable with that area. And I think that even though not everybody would feel comfortable to go outside in a neighborhood area, having an organization that has been there for so many years really helped us get that connection with them. And so the tools that we used were the 10 questions. We did not change any of it except for, because I did do it in Spanish, I had to rephrase some of it in Spanish to make sure that they understood what I was asking. So when you send someone and you're using another language besides English, you want to make sure that they're fluent so that they can rephrase any of the information that needs to be and get them engaged in the conversation. I think that's something that you really want to make sure that is available. We did not have a lot of staff trained in the Harwood, so it was myself. And there was other members that were, because we were in the beginnings of our renovation, we had that project going on. So I ended up doing the conversations. And then I gave one of my staff, a bilingual staff, a crash course of being a note taker, which is a very important role, to make sure that she took good notes and that she also included the way the message was being given to us, the passion, the frustration, the emotion that was there. Because we wanted to make sure that when we put together our themes and our information, when we got everything together, we knew how that information came across to us. So we definitely did not modify any of the Harwood tools. They're definitely great the way they are. So they were definitely the key for us to be able to get that information that we were looking for. And I think one of the things that once we engage with that community is that we've learned not to take anything for granted and to not assume anything. Ask them and find out what is it that they're looking for, and being able to really understand what they go through. Not being able to walk after a certain time of the day, it's something that is very hard for those families to live. They wish they didn't have to be in that situation, but that's what they deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so being able to know that they have transportation issues and that's one of the barriers that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, it allowed us to just understand that no matter what, we're going to be the ones that, if we want to serve this community, we need to go out there and serve and provide some of the services that we have to their area to make sure that they get those services. I think the other thing that shaped from here is the fact that we were able to understand the outward approach and not just think that, oh, this program would be great and our community would love it, what we're doing now is we're always asking our community. So one of the things that we've done as well is, excuse me, is get our community involved with everything that we do. So for example, when we started our Library of Things collection, we went out to the community and asked them, what would you like to see in this collection? We're wanting to add this collection. What would you like to see? And so we just got the community to tell us what types of things. And so now our Library of Things actually just won an award from the California Special District Association for innovation. And we have drones, we have Nintendo Switches, ukuleles, cotton candy machines, bounce houses. I mean, these are all things that the community asked us to have in that collection, and it's all driven by them. We did not choose these items. They told us they wanted to see those items in that collection. So I think that's like the key thing with being outward, is really getting to know what your community is looking for. As well, like for our fine-free policy, when we were looking at that, and we had thought about it, but we weren't sure if this is something we could move forward with. In conversations with the community, there were conversations that we had with some of the librarians at the schools, and they had mentioned that some of the parents won't let the kids check out books because of fear of them losing the books and then having to pay the fines, or patrons that had fines in their library cards because they had turned in the book late when they were kids and now they're adults, and so now they don't use the library or check out because of that. So those are things that we've learned in the process of moving forward with the things that we do. So getting that information, we were able to get rid of our fines and be able to really remove those barriers that was stopping some of our community members to use the library. We didn't want to have the barriers from them utilizing the services that we provided. So that was one that we discovered along the way. And in the process, we got some books returned once that policy came into place because they didn't have the overdue fines. So we got some lost books back. So that was very rewarding to see that, okay, they don't have the fines now, so just return the book. That's all we want. So that's one of the things that came out of that, as well as being able to really have a stronger partnership with our organizations, for example, Lot 318 and the school district. In the process of our renovation, we were going to have very limited services as well as programs. So then what we decided to do is that the staff that was getting some of the programs be put on hold during the renovation, we went ahead and reassigned them. And so the Lot 318 has the homework club. So they go out to the homework club during the week, and they spend some time helping them at their location, which is outdoors, outside. And then we have staff going to 3 of the local schools doing help in the classrooms with group of students, one-on-one, and in the libraries. And that's a commitment that we did during the school year during our renovation, because we wanted to make sure that the community realized that we're out there and that we wanted to do things to help them and make sure that they that we were there as another way to help. So I think that's what really came out of it, just being able to have a stronger partnership with these organizations. It made a huge impact on the community, and they recognize staff, they recognize me, and it's really nice to be able to go out there and have that connection with the community. What we're looking at now is trying to see what other ways we can give back to that community. So for example, right now with Lot 318, I actually have a meeting with the director on Thursday because they now have a dedicated space that they've actually offered to us to use to hold meetings or to do specific programs for their community. So that's something that I'm looking forward to get started. And then also we want to expand, the community conversations that we've had. We've only dealt with that community right now, which is the low-income Hispanic community. But I know there's other areas in the community that might have needs that we don't realize, and we want to make sure we also address those. So I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions for you here. I don't know if you can see them in the chat.
Okay.
But one of them is, how did you get the buy-in and support to go out? This is it was asked when you were talking about doing community conversations in backyards at apartments. Mm-hmm. It's like, how did you get the buy-in and support to be able to do that? And then also commit so many small groups instead of just large groups? And are you seeing a return on investment that's allowing you to continue that approach?
Okay, so we were very fortunate that when we started the Innovator Lab, we had our library director, one of our trustees, myself, and then one of the city community directors of the city. We're independent special districts, so we're not part of the city. So we pulled them as well to try to be part of this project. And so having so many people that knew that we were trying to help the community really helped us get this going. So I think the biggest thing for us is that our trustees and our library director were on board from the very beginning, which made it easier for me to just move forward with the project and just really go out there. And because we did not have a lot of staff originally to go out and do the conversations, that's why we targeted to a small group that we knew was underserved. So I think we knew there was a need there. We just wanted to see what exactly their needs were. And I think baby steps, just start small. It doesn't have to be huge. And I think that's what really helped us, just doing a small group, because the impact is huge. I mean, you have like this organization that has been there for over 12 years, even learned something while we were having the conversation. There were people out in the street sitting down and doing drugs, and the director of the organization did not realize that was going on. And so the families needed to feel empowered that, they had the ability to call the police department and let them know what was going on. So small things like that, I think they kind of start to snowball, and you start to see the impact, and you start to create these stories that really make a difference in when you're presenting and letting your city council or your board of directors know, how much of an impact you're making with these small groups. So sometimes it's more rewarding, and your stories make a bigger impact.
So if I can add a little bit to what you said, if my memory serves me correctly, part of the reason you decided to focus on that community is because, broadly speaking, it wasn't just you, but it was the library who wanted to have a stronger connection there, but it was struggling to have a stronger connection.
Correct. And so we couldn't get them to the library. And I think till this day, we know we're not going to get them at the library because they have other barriers that's stopping them to get there. So what is it that we can do to provide these services that we're able to offer them and still make an impact with these individuals?
Yeah, starting with an area that is organizationally relevant, where it's tied to your work, and where you can demonstrate this practice, allowing you to get something done that you might not have otherwise been able to get done, causes people to pay attention.
Right.
Yeah. So that's just, I'm drawing on my memory of earlier conversations with you. And you might see a question here: how many conversations did you do before you started recognizing patterns and started to take action?
Just the 3 conversations alone with that community in Spanish, right away the theme was identical. You started to see that. But we had a conversation with the teens, which they also brought up the same issues. So within the first 4 conversations, you started to see a pattern. The safety, the transportation, and then education was a big thing for this community. And so being a library, the educational component of it was, definitely something we can address.
Yeah. And I'm just curious, could you talk a little bit about what it took to go out into a community like this, where maybe you weren't the trusted person at the time and you really didn't you know, just I'm harking back to what you told me about doing your first conversation in that community, what it was like for you. What did you learn about yourself?
I'm brave. I definitely feel like it was intimidating. Don't get me wrong. It felt intimidating because of the reputation that area had. However, having someone that had been working with this community for so many years, and they were so they trusted them so much, that I felt like it wasn't really putting myself at risk or feeling like I was in danger. I mean, a few years back, I went on a ride along with a police chief then, and they do movie nights, and they have like this huge apartment complex that has a white wall. And there's graffiti all over the neighborhood, but that one specific wall, no one touches. No one does any graffiti on that wall because they know that that organization does movie nights for that community in that wall, and they won't touch it. And so that trust and that the respect that they have for the organization, I felt as staff that it goes a long way, and that knowing that there was another organization coming to help and make it stronger, to help their community, I think really what allowed me to just feel comfortable enough and to go and help and put myself out there. And the community was, you know, it started slow, the conversation, but the moment they opened up, you know, they do definitely open up. They really start to tell you what they're dealing with, what's going on, what they would like to see. And I think that's the first thing, just taking that first step. And you do have to feel comfortable doing it. I wouldn't expect everyone to go out and do community conversations in a backyard in a, you know, apartment complex, but there are staff that might feel comfortable doing that, and I was one of them, and I'm very glad that I did, because it definitely has opened up so many doors and so many opportunities for us to provide services to this community.
So you have an additional question here. How important was it for a Spanish speaker to go into the community for the work? Honestly, what success level do you think a white English speaker would have with this community?
Okay, so for this specific community, a Spanish speaker was definitely necessary. And it needed to be someone that was fluent, that would be able, like I said, to rephrase some of the questions to make sure they understood what you were asking. If there's someone, because you want to have at least two people go and a facilitator and a note taker. So if someone is able to translate and be able to really understand what they're saying, they can be the note taker, but your facilitator should be someone that's very fluent in the language. So even if it's, you know, Chinese or Mandarin, whatever it is, you need to make sure that the facilitator is strong in that language. The message that you get and the communication that goes back and forth is very crucial during that conversation.
Good. So a little bit about, you were on a similar trajectory as Sacramento in terms of time, in terms of training, in terms of the coaching and all of that. Where are you now with all of this, and what's next for Placentia with turning outward?
Okay, so what's next is definitely trying to get out to other community areas in Placentia. We're hoping to grow our partnership. Right now, it's our strongest partnership is Lot 318 in the school district. So we're hoping to start moving towards other organizations that work closely with our community to address the needs. So that's definitely one. And then the other thing is to continue to work with Lot 318 and then in this new adventure where now that they have a dedicated office space that we can use, we might be able to bring more services to them than what we're currently having. So, you know, besides assisting them with the homework club and their small library, we bring the summer reading program to them. You know, we get the logs, we bring the prizes to them. We want to see what else we can do. And I think this time maybe targeting the adults because we've done a lot of the specific with the children, but the adults also have the needs, and they're interested in learning some of the things that we provide that might help them.
Very good. Sounds exciting. We'll have to stay in touch.
Definitely.
So I have a couple questions for both Yesenia and Kathy. Let me see if we can get Kathy. There she is. And let me move on to the questions here, just a second. Yeah, the questions basically, I was wondering if you two could just talk about a little bit is, what did it require of you personally to choose to engaging with a community that is not often heard or overlooked? Just what did it take of you personally to get that started?
Who wants to go first?
Huh?
I said, who wants to go first?
You can go first.
Oh, okay. Well, for us, it was making it a priority, depending on others to do their part, not owning it and trying to control it, letting go of things and sharing the workload, and using that information to make it using the information for meaningful decisions. So personally, it meant making it a priority, and there's lots of work to do at the public library. Every day you go in and there's, a new fire to put out, but you have to make room for it because it's not information that is going to waste. No matter what you learn at the conversations, you can use it for something at the library.
Okay, for me personally, I think because the group that we decided to start with had that reputation, I think personally being okay with exposing myself to that community, and I think the number one thing is that I knew I wasn't in danger, and that it was fine to go there. And like I said, just knowing that there was another organization that had been working with this specific community for so many years really helped in just getting started. I know for a while, Cartlon, that I think we're really behind and we're not moving forward and we're not making any impact. We have no stories. But in reality, we were getting that information that we needed, and we were able to really understand, some of the barriers that these families were going through, and understand and not take anything for granted, as well as not assuming anything.
So I have a question for both of you, because I know this came up for both of you, this notion about making it a priority. And you mentioned, Kathy, you're both busy people and you've got lots going on in your life besides this. Everybody on this call that's in the library sector knows that you're busy people or already have full agendas. How do you make this something that's in the middle of your table as opposed to off on the corner of your table?
Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay. Kind of hard online, isn't it? You, like I said before, you have to make a priority, you have to put it on your calendar, and you have to understand that this is meaningful work, it deserves a priority, and the results are going to take your library to a new place.
The same, I think it's just scheduling that conversation and just having that connection with the group that you're going to go meet and get to know. It really is important for you to just take that first step. And it might seem like it's really hard and challenging, but once you go out there and start the conversation, it just takes a life of its own and it just flows, especially with the questions that are provided. You just have to go and just do it and know that it will flow smoothly.
Yeah, so I noticed Kathy's head nodding when you said, get out there and do the first conversation.
Yeah, the conversations are definitely addicting. You'll love it. Just practice on someone, practice on a friend's group, or practice on, teens are really good to practice on. They're very forgiving and they're fun. So just try it, you'll want to do more. And it's very eye-opening, and you'll be so happy you did it.
And if I could put myself in the role of a coach real briefly, I would say, as you both referenced, put it on your calendar. Make it concrete, work towards it. Don't just have sort of the vague understanding, I want to do this, but make a specific commitment to yourself. And what happened to Yesenia there? All of a sudden I lost her video. I'm hoping we'll get her back here. I don't know what happened. Any rate, let me move on, and for the time being, I'll just ask this of you, Kathy. What advice would you have for others who seek to engage a community that may seem hard or challenging? What advice would you have for people that want to do that?
Well, use your network of staff, and the network of staff, they will have contacts, and make sure you share all this information with everyone at the library. Make sure you get input from the staff and, you know, your library community first, and then the others, they'll have contacts. So for example, have one conversation, get as many people as you can to the first conversation. When they sign in, ask them, well, actually get their information to get back to them, and then ask them at the end of the conversation, who else should we be talking to? And they'll have suggestions, and it just grows from there. And like Yesenia said, don't be scared. We had a lot of information about the specific community, although our staff did, and they were very informed. I learned a lot from them, and just using others' expertise.
Yeah, so if the notion, if I might add just a little bit there, if the notion is that you're trying to, this approach is about making community a common enterprise, it starts from the very beginning when you're getting help in figuring out how are you going to go about doing it. Engage other people in helping you figure that out. Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just keep in contact with them. When you take the library out of it, it's a very different thing. When you take the library out of the conversation, you get a lot more information. People are thinking more about their personal, you know, like I said, their personal aspirations, their concerns. What do they think would make the community a better place to be? And then it can grow into something bigger. And I'm really looking forward to our library engaging more people outside of the disability community and including the disability community to tell us what are their top 3 concerns and how do they think we can move the whole community forward.
Yeah, and I will say that typically what I've seen with libraries that do strategic planning using this approach, what they come away from those conversations with is a greater insight into where to focus and why.
Right.
It just gives them greater insight into where to focus and why to focus area.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So Yesenia, hello again.
Hi, sorry about that.
That's okay. This is actually perfect timing. What advice would you have for others who are seeking to engage a community that may seem hard or challenging to engage? What sort of lessons learned would you have for folks?
I think just taking that first step, definitely just go and set that date with that community, and like I had mentioned earlier, the questions, the tools that are provided.
Oops. Seems like we have a pause in the audio here. But I could fill in her sentence, which is basically the tools and the conversations, they work. You don't really need to change them. They can just work as they are. They've been tested over a long, long period of time in many, many different contexts. And what they're referencing are the community conversation guide, which is the 10 questions.
Right. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I think I filled in the rest of your sentence for you.
Okay.
Yeah. So any other questions from folks? Anybody here, the attendees, if you have questions, drop them in the chat box and we'll address those. Let's see. So yeah, one of the things I was wondering, Yesenia seems to bounce in and out, so I'll ask you, Kathy, you know, how do you balance the needs of you know, where to focus. You've started focusing on the area with people with disabilities, specifically autism, and now you're moving on to the whole system. There are certain sectors within the community where a deeper dive, such as with disabilities, might be appropriate. How do you deal with the balance of where to focus your efforts and where you go deep? And are there conflicts there at all?
Woo, that is one big question there. I have to say that at the very beginning, it was all about the passion of like 4 people who were totally committed to bringing more services for the disability community, and each person in that 4 had a family member with some sort of disability. So it was that initial passion of those people and balancing it with the bigger picture. I guess it's knowing that these tools work and knowing that there's a way to get information to inform anything that your library is going to do. So like I said before, it's just not wasted effort. Why are we creating programs as libraries and we don't even know what people want? We're guessing, or we're using our own passion for a particular craft or program, not knowing, unless we're surveying staff afterward saying, you know, what did you think about this or that? And it's kind of trial and error when we really don't have to do that. When we have community information, that just helps us be more effective.
So if I could put a hat on here real quick to help answer that question from what I've seen in some other libraries, what Sacramento is setting themselves up for right now, Kathy was describing how they have all their branches doing conversations. And I think you said everyone is supposed to be doing 3 by, what is it?
December.
By December. Well, in doing those 3 conversations, they're developing the skill and competency of doing the conversations. So they're going to have a broader network of people who are trained and competent and understand how to engage in this kind of way and how to ask the questions. And what I have seen emerge over time is when you have more competency and skill internally to be able to do this work, you also have greater capacity to focus in more areas where you want to do a deeper dive. So it wouldn't surprise me, for example, if down the road, Sacramento comes back and said, you know, we had a particular thing we wanted to focus on and we had some other people that could focus on it. And they did a deeper dive like we did with autism. It may be dealing with teenagers, or it may be dealing with senior citizens, or it may be dealing with any particular sector in the community. But a key learning from this is they didn't keep the Harwood approach to their core group of 5 people. They expanded the practice to their staff. And that is a critical learning in this, is you want to, what we say, de-silo the work from a core team that's doing it, engage more people in doing the practice, and that's going to build more capacity and skill organizationally so you can focus in different areas. And then that kind of tension about where to focus and why becomes less.
Right. Thank you.
And I'm just doing that because I've seen it sort of, I'm projecting forward what I think might happen.
Right.
So we have another question. What advice do you have when the group you're meeting with refuses to stay on script?
Well, there's a really nice tool in the Harwood packet, and it has troubleshooting those things. What happens when it goes off track? It depends on the level of how far off track it goes, but you can ask a clarifying question. You can say, would it be possible for us to give someone else an opportunity to talk now? You could say, well, we're not on that exact topic right now, but we can park that and talk about it afterwards. But there's definitely tools on how to get you through conversations and how to keep people on script. But by and large, we didn't have a lot of problems with that. There was never any antagonistic person. Some people are more verbose than others. So you just have to say, excuse me, we have to give other people a chance, and they usually understand.
Did you have any experience with people feeling a group that felt from the get-go that the framework of questions was oppressive?
No, we started out with the ground rules, And it says one of the ground rules is have fun. It's a kitchen table style conversation, so just relax and have fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it started it out on a good foot, and people do want to share. They do want to share. And the people that were committed to the whole 90 minutes, which I thought was kind of a long time, but it went really fast.
Yeah, so I think it sounds like somebody had an experience where from the get-go they found the conversation framework oppressive because they'd say it's from a personal experience. To be honest, I'd probably need to do a little bit deeper dive on that question to be able to help answer it. But generally speaking, if you do the ground rules first, make sure not to skip the ground rules because they lay the framework for how the conversation is going to even function.
Right.
But this particular individual that's posing the question here, I'd be happy for them to reach out to me and I could talk with them because I need more context to be able to answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't know how to move forward when the framework was called a white Western construct. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I can say that we've seen this work in lots of different communities of different color, different nature, different, this conversation has been done in different ethnicities. It's been done in Aboriginal communities in Australia. And the experience I've had in all of those settings is that it just works. But you have to set it up right, and people need to be sort of invited into it in the right way. But yeah, email me and we can go into it further. Any other general questions or any specific questions for Kathy? Seems like we've lost Yesenia here. Oh, she's back. Any other questions folks have? Just type them in your chat box. So I don't see any other questions. So with that, welcome back, Yesenia. Yeah, I was just, we don't have any other questions. So I think what we're going to do is just thank the two of you very much for taking your time to participate. And
sorry for the technical difficulties.
Yeah, well, the devil lives in technology, I think. But thank you very much for taking the time to do this. And thank you especially for the work that you're doing with those communities, because I know they're not the kind of communities that libraries typically reach out to in this way. And, I would expect from what I know that both of you have gained a lot of trust in those communities just by the nature of the way you've engaged and worked with them. So you're good examples of turning outward librarians.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlton.
Okay.
Thanks for all your help.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. And we have, real quickly, I want to go over some things coming up. We have 3 more webinars coming up, one on building allies across the community in June 26th. We have one on supporting a turned outward organizational structure in September, and then the library's role when disaster strikes in November. And then we've got a Public Innovators Lab for libraries that's scheduled in Atlanta, October 15th through 17th. And as both of these ladies mentioned, that's where they got to start. They attended a lab. There's also a virtual lab in the fall of 2019 that you could partake of. And also Rich is doing a national speaking tour, and he is a very dynamic, inspirational speaker. If you've not had the chance to hear him, I would strongly encourage it. And if you're interested in that, contact Colleen Bowman at the Institute, and you see her email address there. And then just for more information, you can visit the Harwood Institute website at www.theharwoodinstitute.org. And so thank you very much for joining us today, and hopefully we'll see you June 26th for Building Allies Across the Community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Carlton.
Thank you.